Hey, Lauren, how you doing?
Hi, Martin. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Yeah. So, hi, everyone. We are DevRels at Sanity.io, which is a platform for structured content that allows you to manage and deliver your content however and wherever you need. You can replace your traditional CMS and treat your content as data and flow it over APIs so that your content as data can be truly portable and go wherever it needs to go. So today I thought we would check out Cloudflare Pages and deploy a Sanity Next app and see what it's like to deploy a website on Cloudflare Pages. So we're going to build a blog, and Sanity is going to be the back end, and then we will use Next.js to build the front end. And maybe along the way, we'll check out some cool new Sanity things like our Grok powered webhooks in the process.
Sounds awesome. So
Yeah.
the first thing I'm reading on the Cloudflare Pages site is that it's a Jamstack platform. Now, Jamstack is JavaScript, APIs, and so the typical setup for a Jamstack project is that you have a so-called headless CMS and a front end that is decoupled from the CMS. And then you have some sort of hosting service which will trigger builds whenever you update your content, right?
Yep. That's exactly right.
So this excites me. There's a few different actors already doing the hosting bit and some kind of continuous integration parts as well. And I'm really excited that Cloudflare is moving into this space.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited to check it out and see how it goes.
absolutely. So we're gonna start by setting up a backend, and of course, that will be done in Sanity. So I'm gonna open our friendly get started page. That's it. There we go. So we have multiple ways of getting started with Sanity. We have a whole bunch of these starter projects that will set you up with a front end usually and a predefined schema and some data sometimes. Following up, proceeding on that thought, the prerequisites for setting up a Sanity project is that you have the command line interface installed. If you don't, this is how you do it. You can do it with yarn or with npm, and it installs globally on your system. That went quick. So let me just make a folder for our project. So take, you know about the take command in ZSH?
No, what is this? What are we doing?
This is so cool because for like a decade, I went around typing make there and then cd into. Take does both of those. So
What?
is that cool?
Yeah.
It's super cool, but you need to have. I'm not sure if it's baked into the ZSH, which is now standard terminal for Mac, or if you need the Oh My ZSH
That's what I have. I have
thing.
Oh My
And then it
ZSH.
should work for you. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's pretty cool. So I'm going to do it again, take and backend, because that's what we're doing right now. I got the command line interface installed. So that means to boot up a project, all I do is Sanity init. And it's going to start up this helpful little interactive experience of creating a project. So let's call this CF again. Right, we're just going to go with the default here. That means we'll get one data set called production, and the path looks okay. So here we can make a choice if we want to just start with a completely empty project like a tabula rasa blank slate, or if we want to start up with one of the kind of starter projects. Some of them have both schemas defined and some data in them. The one we're going to pick today just have the schema but no actual data, so we'll have to supply the content ourselves, which we want to do, of course.
Yes, so we're going to choose the blog schema.
Absolutely. And we're done. And we get some helpful commands to open links or to manage our settings. But I think what we want to do is we want to get this open in a code editor and start it so we can see how it looks. Code editor. This is my problem. If I try to talk and type at the same time, I just type whatever I'm saying. So go away.
Yeah.
Code. Right. So here we are. I'm gonna bump up the size here a bit. Is this good?
Yep.
There?
I think that's perfect.
Awesome. Right. So yeah, I'll just boot it up as well so we can kind of look at the result as we look at these schemas. So yarn start should work even though the command is sanity start, right? Yeah,
yes.
And there we go. Gonna log in with my Sanity.io account. Yeah, so what we're looking at here is the Sanity Studio. Do you want to kind of give an introduction to this?
Sure. So this is where the Sanity Studio is where you're going to enter in all of your content. And what we see here is sort of the base template that you get for the blog template. And we're sort of looking at the things you would expect to see related to a blog content model. So you have a post document type, and you have an author document type, and you have a category document type. And within the code, if we want to also take a look at the code,
absolutely will. Yep.
Those are going to be also our schemas. So we have a post schema, and we have an author schema, and we have a category schema. And what schemas are types of documents, and it basically describes what an author or content creator or editor can do inside of the studio. So if we look inside of the author schema, we'll see, okay, so a person creating content in this document type can write a name, they can generate a slug, they can add an image, those kind of things. And that's what you expect to see. They could also add a bio, so a bit of information about the author. And then we can look at that inside the studio.
Right. And then we notice that this corresponds directly to what's going on in here, right?
Exactly.
We have a name, we have a slug, and these fields, because they are different types, they also have like different appearance and different attributes, and some of them have some really cool functions, like you can just quickly generate a slug based on the title because the field is of type slug, right?
And then we'll take a look at the post schema, and we'll see the same type thing that we noticed in the author schema. You again get fields that an author or content creator or editor is going to be able to enter content into inside of the studio, and you'll see things related to a post. You get a title, you get a slug. But I do want to pay close attention to this author field, and what we see it is of a type reference. And what that means is it is referencing the document type author that we just talked about. And that is so that you can select an author and associate that with the post, meaning this person wrote this post. So that's why this type is particularly handy. So you can use reference types to associate documents and bits of information together. So I did want to make a point of that. But other than that, there's a main image you can see. And if we scroll down a little bit further, we can see some block content, and that uses portable text. And that's sort of Sanity's version of a rich text editor. But again, this is very sort of typical of what you would expect to see maybe in a blog template and a blog website.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and actually add an author so we can just quickly see how this field behaves, because right now we don't have any saved documents of type author. So one thing I always want to point out when we're kind of doing the studio tour is you can leave this and it will be there when you come back, even if you don't publish it. So there's like no risk for me going here of losing any work just because I decided to go do something else. So I kind of blew my funny cover here by typing in Stan Lee earlier, but yeah, I'm using Stan Lee as a author example because I mean the guy is adorable, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, he's dead. That's sad.
Yeah.
So Stan Lee, for those who don't know, is the creator of a lot of classics Marvel superhero but stories and characters.
Yeah.
He created Spider-Man, and that's
Yeah.
gonna be his bio actually. Created Spider-Man.
A lot of the Marvel universe, really.
Yeah. I was playing the Spider-Man game, the PlayStation game. They got
It's so fun.
There's
Yeah.
a cameo. It's super cool.
It's so fun.
Yeah. Right. So now Stan Lee shows up in the reference field. We probably want some more content than just, Stan Lee. So that's not going to be a lot of fun watching me kind of type out a bunch of blog posts. So I guess it's time to reveal that we did actually make a studio with some content already.
Yeah.
I think we'll just switch to that pretty
Yes.
quickly.
It's like television magic, when they have like a cooking show and they make this elaborate dish, but it's done in like 30 seconds. That's what we're going to do. We're going to switch over to this fully completed, fully populated studio with content.
It's the precise same setup. We have an author, we have a post, we have the category type, and also a kind of a configured block content type, which is, we can just swiftly look at this. The portable text type comes with a lot of possibilities for configuration. So what this is a block content or portable text field with a lot of the options just set up. And a lot of these are actually the default options, but it's helpful to have a look at them and kind of get a feel for what kind of things you can configure about this.
Yeah.
So taking at face value that this is the same stuff that we initiated a moment ago, let's start the studio up.
Yeah, let's take a look at the studio and see what it looks like fully populated.
Right. So yeah, I just kind of prefabricated a studio, some content. These are the Fantastic Four, because they're one, fantastic, and two, just four of them. So now we have our studio set up. We have some content in there. And now we want to set up a front end for this. And I happen to know that something else cool dropped recently, namely Next.js version 12, right?
Yeah. So let's build out the front end using Next.js. So I think we can head over to Cloudflare Pages and go to their framework guides, and we can look at that documentation. We can deploy a Next.js site.
Yep. They actually have a kind of comprehensive list of framework guides. So that's always nice to see. I appreciate voluminous documentation.
Yeah, I think they really did cover most of the major frameworks out right now.
Yeah. So here you'll find how to go about starting up a project with Create Next app using npx or Yarn. And I guess it's at this juncture that we sort of admit to we're cheating this bit as well. We kind of made the front end already because I'm not a very fast typer, so nobody actually wants to sit and watch me type. But just to close the bit about Next, it's a super cool framework, React framework. That's what it's kind of going by, right?
Yes.
And there's extensive documentation, of course, of Next, but we also have a lot of resources about how to use Next and Sanity together on, let's see, guides.
Yeah.
So
and you can also go to our YouTube channel and you can see some video tutorials of how to create some Next and Sanity apps. Our colleague Kat just did one where she creates a recipe site using Next and Sanity, and that one's a really good one. So head over to our YouTube channel if you want to check out a video tutorial.
Absolutely, highly recommended. So we have, as mentioned, video tutorials, we have articles, and perhaps most importantly, we have a really cool NPM package or a library. I'm not quite sure of the nomenclature here, but it's a toolkit.
Yeah. So this is Sandy's toolkit for Next.js, and it really goes over, it adds in some sort of helper functions and some helper tools that allows you to connect the Next.js framework to your Sanity backend. And it also has it provides a really great example and use case, and it actually is going to provide example code for the use case we're using right now, which is a blog template, which is very convenient for us. It also goes over how to configure it. So it walks you through how to create your config file and how to enter in your configuration variables and how to set up your environment file. And it walks you through that. So you can definitely check out that toolkit, and it can be installed using npm and also Yarn. I believe it's npm install next-sanity or yarn add next-sanity.
Yep, those should both work. And we are actively maintaining this, of course. So let's have a look at how this would actually work in our real life scenario. So I gotta shut up while I'm typing, as I've explained, or we'll end up making folders of whatever I'm saying. So there we go. Now we got this open in.
It's like gracefully shutting down. That's my favorite. It's like we're gracefully backing away.
Respectfully messing it up. All right, so that was what I was expecting. It's like so quick, you don't even get to think about it before it's started. So here we go. That's the front end. I'm going to do a little shout out to whoever is the maintainer of water.css, which is like this CDN CSS file you can just put into any project, and it will make it look not terrible, right? Because it just applies some styles to all the default elements in HTML and makes it look pretty without having to do any work. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's super great for like doing things like this, or also if you're just like testing something or want to have something really quickly and just want it to look reasonable and great, you can have it up in a flash.
Absolutely. I've been using that one for years. It's
I know.
very cool.
My mind was blown when you showed it to me.
Yeah, it's super nice. And let's just click into one of these posts to show that we have indeed rendered out a page for each post. The actual content here is just something I cut and paste from Wikipedia, so it's I take no responsibility if there's continuation errors here or something. Right. So let's just quickly go through the VS Code project. So we kind of took the example from the Sanity Next GitHub page, and then I just cut away everything we didn't need to make it as kind of slim as possible. So what we ended up with is we got this sanity.js where we are setting up our helper functions, setting up a configured client so we can do querying, setting up the image helper, which kind of helps you get the version of the image that you need in every situation, and also the portable text component, which makes displaying portable text super easy.
Yep.
I elected to follow the convention of putting the dataset and project ID into an environment file, which is not committed into the Git project. Now we're getting kind of inside baseball, but it's worth mentioning because these variables, they become important in just a bit when we're going to set this up on Cloudflare.
Right.
So there's one component, and it's the one I mentioned that includes the CSS file. And then there's the index page. So Next operates with kind of like file system-based routing. So the index page will be the front page of our site. And what we're doing here is we're fetching a list of all the posts that satisfy our criteria, which we'll look at momentarily. And we're kind of just listing them out with, conventional method, the map method, and with a link to each post's page. You want to take us through what's going on here in the get static props function?
Sure. So we're using the get static props function to fetch all of our data from Sanity, and then we're going to use Grok to query that data. And Grok is Sanity's open source query language that can be used to query any JSON data. So what is happening here is basically we are executing a query in Grok that says, I want you to look at all of our posts, and I want you to specifically also look at all posts that have a defined slug. And that's important because we don't want to look at posts that are drafts. For instance, we want to look at posts that have been published. So once you look at all the published posts from those, I want you to pull out certain pieces of information. And those pieces of information are what is called the projection. So we filtered through all of our data, and then we're projecting out the ID, the summary, the title, when it was updated, and the image and the slug. And then we want you to put it in a descending order. So once we get that information, we want to return it in a list. So that's what's happening here. And then we are rendering it out. After we map through it, we are rendering that out in this markup that we see down here below. So that's a pretty quick and dirty explanation, but that is essentially what is happening on this index page that we just showed you. And you can see that by, there's a list of all of the posts, and then there's the image next to it.
Right. So let's just get that site on the side here. Yeah. So in a nutshell, here we specify which documents we're interested in, and here which fields we want to retrieve. Right.
Yep.
And then we map them out on the index page. Now, the last file we're going to look at here is inside of Pages and inside of another folder called Post. And it has this kind of strange name because it's called slug.js, but within square brackets, like array brackets. You want to do the quick and dirty on what that's all about?
I can try. But essentially, so what's happening in this file is, it's a variable based name. And the reason why we have that is because we are essentially creating these pages dynamically. So the posts, every time we create a new post, we want a new individual post page created. So that's why that's a variable, and that's why you see that slug in an array, because essentially we're creating an array of post pages, right? So within here, we see, again, we have our grok query, and what we are querying out is we're looking at post again, and we want to look at all the published posts, and then we want you to specifically look at the first one every time, and we want you to pull out information from these posts. So projecting out, we're going to pull out the ID, the title, the body, which is the rich text information, and the main image, and then give us the slug. And then once we get all of that information, we're going to use get static props. And you want to explain get static props, because I think I sometimes mess that up.
These two methods, get static props and get static paths, are required in any sort of kind of template type file. And I think it's just like as reasonable as you need these to fetch the data that you are going to use to build the page.
Right.
So it's kind of like there would be no page if you didn't do the data fetching. So that's
right,
kind of how you have to set it up.
And you have to use the paths because we're creating these pages dynamically based on
yes, absolutely.
This generated slugs.
Yeah, so we're creating the routing to these pages dynamically from the query result, I guess, is how I put it. Awesome. And going down here, there's really not a lot to it. We're doing the same thing we did in the index.js. We're kind of just using the data and presenting it in the appropriate way. Now, there is one thing I'd love to just dip into before we go to the next level of this video, and that is, here we go. So one of the things that always kind of gets a reaction when demoing the studio is this editor for images, where you can set the crop and you can also set the hotspot for every image. So this is kind of the explanation of why we're focusing on Reed Richards' crotch. That's because I was toying around with this function. So let's say we don't want to focus on his crotch, we could simply go here and say, okay, I want this image, cut away these parts, that's the crop bit. And then you have the hotspot bit, which lets you say, okay, if you're not showing the whole image, focus on this bit because it's what's important.
Right.
And if I publish that and do like this, there we go.
It's just so cool.
I think that's so cool, the hotspot stuff. There's a lot of cool things about images in Sanity. I strongly recommend all of you go read my docs article on it.
Okay.
We have a front end. We have content. It's time to get this flying, isn't it?
Yeah, so, let's deploy it.
In preparation for this, the only thing I've done is I've put all the front-end code into a Git repo and pushed it to GitHub because we kind of need to have it in a repo to be able to use the Cloudflare service. So
right, as you would any other. If you deployed it anywhere else, we would need to have it in a repo first.
Yeah, there's like, it's not a surprising way of going about things. So here we go. I'm going to recommend everyone look out for these kind of pill-shaped light purple links because I found a lot of useful info clicking them.
Yeah.
So I'm already connected to my GitHub account and I can choose my repository here.
Yeah, and they're the one thing I liked about when we were, looking through this is there are a lot of documentation hints all over the place. Like it will say, documentation for this is here, or it'll say next to the heading, like it'll let you know here, you can click here for here's how you configure builds, or here's how you do this. That was super helpful.
Absolutely, I agree. They're good about making the documentation available when you need it. So we're going to call this the Fantastic Four project. We're going to use the main branch for production. We are going to open this link because we'll need it in a moment. We'll look closer at it then. This is also kind of cool. They have like these presets that it doesn't mean like it's not a starter. It doesn't like set up any code for you. Yeah, so the framework preset just kind of intuits where what the command to run, where the output folder is, and all this stuff. It's pretty clever about it. So if you're using the default setup, chances are it'll get it right. What we do have to do is we need to add these environment variables. I don't know, is there anything interesting to say about environment variables that we haven't said?
Nope. I think we just copy these in.
Yep. Beautiful. So let's do it. We need to have the key and the value correspond to what we're doing in our front-end code, obviously. Oh, that's terrible. You don't use words like obviously.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's unkind.
Yeah, but it's okay. We can edit it out.
Yeah, or there we go. Right, so we have our data set and our project ID, and now we need one more thing, and that's why I told you to note this link, which I opened in a new tab. So it turns out because Next 12 is like super on the edge, it's like dropped a couple of days ago. Cloudflare hasn't updated their node version for the build process to accommodate Next 12 yet. Now, I'm pretty sure that by the time this video is out, that's that's changed because I've been talking to them and they're on the case. But for just now, we need to find this variable, node version, and the default would be node version 12.18.0, but we need 12.22.0, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and I think that should be it.
Let's deploy.
Yeah. All right.
Yay!
Yeah, success. Let's open this up just to verify that, yep, we're live with our great, fantastic knowledge blog or something. Right. So the piece that's missing is we need to kind of hook Sanity and Cloudflare together, because right now it's just hooked up with our GitHub repo, right? So it'll only build, it'll only initiate a build whenever we update the code in our repo. But we want it to initiate a build every time we publish some new content, right?
Yes.
So let's see if we can find somewhere to set up a webhook.
Yes. Enter our Grok-powered webhooks.
Yeah.
And
that's exciting too. We have some stuff there. Let's see, build and deployments. Here we go. And add deploy hook. So these are usually pretty straightforward. And again, I'm typing what I'm saying.
Well, how about I talk?
Yeah, you talk.
So I think we're going to create a webhook that connects Sanity to Cloudflare. And basically what we're going to do is we're just going to send an HTTP request that is going to trigger when something changes within our system or within our studio. So we'll figure out what that might be in just a second. But for right now, we're just connecting the two pieces together. So what Martin has just done is he has gone in and grabbed the deploy hook from Cloudflare. And now we're going to go over to our manage in Sanity, and we're going to set up and actually create the webhook. So first, let's fill in our information in manage. So we're going to give it a name.
Yep.
And
usually we would be conscious enough to add a description, but not now because we'll remember what this is about. So
and we're gonna get our deploy hook URL from Cloudflare. You can go to Cloudflare in your documentation and get that. We'll skip over that for now.
Yep.
And the next thing we want to look at is our data set. We're going to choose all data sets for now just because we only have one, and that's production. But there are use cases and reasons why you would want to specify which data set you're using. For instance, if you have more than one, like production or staging or testing or dev, maybe you only want this webhook to trigger on production. So you would make sure to select production in your data set. And now let's also select when we want this webhook to trigger. So when do we want this webhook to trigger a build? We definitely want it to trigger when something new is created, but I think also this time we want it to trigger when something is updated. So when something changes.
All right, let's check it.
And then we won't do it for delete this time, but you can. And then so this filter and projection part is where Grok comes in. And again, that's our open source query language for JSON data. And we're going to use Grok to really sort of kick webhooks into sort of hyperdrive, right? So instead of a webhook normally just fires, when anything at all, changes or gets created or updated, we're going to be very specific and tell this webhook to only trigger when a new author is created or when an existing author from our content is updated. So we're going to use the filter part of Grok, and we're going to say underscore type is equal to our document type author. And this is the same document type that we looked at previously when we were looking at our Sanity Studio code.
Right. So that's the filtering part of the webhook. There's also the projection part of webhooks, where you can shape the actual payload that is sent with the webhook, opening the door for a lot of cool possibilities. We'll just quickly skip through these advanced settings. You have control over the HTTP method, and you can add headers and so on and so forth. All of this looks good, so we'll just save it and see if we can get it to work.
Yeah.
Now, I have my Cloudflare Pages deployment list here, and we'll go into our studio and we'll add Jack Kirby as an author who merits credit for the Fantastic Four, I believe.
He does.
And
so let's see.
Publish. And there we go.
Oh, look at that. Super quick. All right. So our webhook is working. As you can see, we have triggered a build in Cloudflare Pages, and that build is currently in progress.
Right. And it's going to take a little while to build, and we need to get this recording in the can. So I think we probably are not going to do a lot of more experimentation with webhooks, but I absolutely do want to mention that we have some excellent guides on Grok-powered webhooks on Sanity.io.
And there are some super cool and awesome things you can do, particularly when you get into using the filter and projection in letting you know, being specific about what kind of content or data you want to pull out and bring out into the payload. And this opens it up to, like, if you want to use webhooks to trigger some kind of notification system or like some kind of alert on another platform. Like I want this webhook to alert maybe in Slack or Twilio or something when something in the studio is updated. So that's why projections and the ability to use Grok with webhooks is super cool, because you do now have this really great, tool for granularity and working with your content at your disposal in terms of notifications and alerts.
All right. Yeah, it's kind of a game changer, to be honest.
Definitely.
So in conclusion, we've had a look at how to get up and running with a Jamstack project on Cloudflare Pages using Sanity and Next.js version 12. I'm happy about this. Should we wrap it up?
I think so. I think this is really good.
All right. So
awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.